So this is assignment 1, point. It's the hand-drawn version. We start off with this high contrast image, which is then reduced to the black and white high contrast image. And in Photoshop, I superimpose the 1/4" grid lines over the top of it. And then put that off onto an 8.5 by 11 sheet as a 6.
So what I'm going to try to do here is to show you using my own drawing board. And I'm going to have a tripod set up here, so I'm going to pause this for a minute while I get it set up on the tripod, and you'll be able to see on my drawing board what it is that I want you to do. So short of being live in a classroom where I would be doing this in front of you, I've got the 6x6 printed out onto a piece of paper, and you can see the grid lines that are superimposed over the top of the black and white image. I have taken and taped another version of this down to my drawing board, and perhaps as you can see, I have drawn corresponding lines on the surface of that using a non-photo blue pencil, which I have right here. You can use your lead holder, of course, with a non-photo blue lead in it in order to get these blue lines. And then below that I have indicated a small group of lines here with 3 or 4 1/4" squares in them, where I have used my circle template to draw in the corresponding lines. And I've taken my circle template here, and I'm going to move my camera in a bit closer here in just a second so you can see what I'm doing. And you can see I've got a line marked at 1/4". I've got a circle at 3/16, a circle at 1/8, and a circle at 1/16. And that's what these dots correspond to on the piece of tracing paper. I'm going to take and tape this down to my drawing board at the bottom here so that it doesn't move around on me so much. And I'm going to pause it again and move the camera more over my shoulder so you can see what's going on. Now, as best that I can explain this, and I'm standing behind the camera here for a moment, you can see that on the grid here, the areas that are in darkest is where I would use my 1/4" dot or circle. So you'd have a series of them going along corresponding to all of the darkest areas in the piece. This is what I want you to do by way of the hand-drawn version of this first. So as you can see, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of these, and then of course I want you to color all of those in. This is going to give you the rough version of Project 1, Part 1. And you're going to use this as a go-by when you do the second half, which we'll be using Illustrator. Okay, so you're going to end up with all of these dots, the large 1/4" dots in all of the areas where the image is the darkest. Where it gets lighter, you're going to drop back, and you're going to have to use your imagination on this one. Okay, so like this square here is not completely dark as these are in over here. Well, in that case you might use the 3/16 square, which is the one that's 25% smaller than the last one. So you would use that one there. And if you've got one that's even lighter yet, you might use one that is only an 1/8 of an inch, which is this guy right here. So that would correspond to this square right here. And if you've got one that's really, really light, like this one right here, that one might only take a square that's a 1/16 of an inch, which is the smallest of the dots, and that one would be this one right here. Okay, so when you're all done, you're going to have this whole thing covered with dots 1/4 of an inch down to 1/16 of an inch, except for where it is completely white, and you would leave those completely alone. All right, does that make sense? Okay, well, so what I've done now is I've kind of gone along and marked off. From here over, all of this will be dark, and from this point over that way will all be dark. And then I've got to go in here and decide which ones of the other 3 points are going to correspond to what's left of the grid. It'll take you some time to get all of these drawn in and colored in like this. But it'll ultimately save you a lot of time when it comes time to do the Illustrator version of this, because a lot of the thinking process on what you're going to have to do will have already been done.
And here I've sped the tape up a bit.
Now I've got the area kind of defined where everything kind of changes from these big 1/4 inch points inward. All of the points are going to be either the next correspondingly smaller ones inside of that. Outside of that, everything's going to be the larger 1/4 inch dots or points, which will cover the entire grid. So at this point you can see that I have filled in most of the points that correspond to the largest or darkest area of the piece. A little short while here we will take a look at, after I've gone in and completed it and filled in the ones that are 25% smaller, 50% smaller, and 75% smaller, as you can see, corresponding to these points down here along the bottom that I put in there to check out what I was doing with the circle template here. Okay, we'll take a look at that here shortly. And here I have filled in most of the rest of the corresponding points. As you can see, the ones which are 25%, 50%, and 75% smaller, as a jibe with these down here. So that's what I want you to do as part of the part 1, is to do this, a sketch version of this. I'll scan this here in a bit with a piece of white paper underneath that so that you can see what it looks like.